Schluckst du die blaue Kapsel, ist alles aus. Du wachst in deinem Bett auf und glaubst an das, was du glauben willst.
Ion is a boy who plays, moving the pieces back and forth. A boy owns the kingdom. The telos, the biological and spiritual perfection and final stage, which encompasses the lifetime of each individual, is called Ion, eternity.
Schluckst du die rote Kapsel, bleibst du im Wunderland. Und ich führe dich in die tiefsten Tiefen des Kaninchenbaus.
In the same way, the telos of the whole heaven with the stars, Ion, a word formed from AEI, epsilon, eternal, is immortal and divine. Knowledge, gamma nu sigma iota, gnosis, shows the way to salvation. It is the memory of one's own, heavenly, origin from the light. While the material world or creation of the demiurge is filled with loneliness, with terrible fear of demonic powers, all real-life processes are toxic and demonic infected. The Aeons, together with their divine origin, the unknown God, form the pleroma, ancient Greek pilambra omega mu alpha fullness, of the sum of purely spiritual entities. The unknown God, who eludes all human imagination, is surrounded by a fullness, the pleroma, of spiritual beings or spirit beings, the Aeons, which he emanates from his unfathomable primal source. The Amtichnas sets the age sequence. 1. Poseidon. 2. Zeus, younger brother of Poseidon. 3. Hephaestus, son of Zeus, also a generation later. The Trojan War is a central event in Greek and Roman mythology. Homer's Iliad describes decisive war scenes during the siege of the city of Troy, Lion, by the army of the Greeks, who are mostly called Achaeans in the Iliad, less often Danes. However, only 51 days of the 10-year siege are reported in total. Other events are recorded in other epics within the so-called epic cycle. Troy was part of the kingdom of Lydia, which had the city of Sardis as its capital probably from the time of Ellias, one of the kings of the Myrmidata dynasty, from the beginning of the 6th century BC. The last king of this dynasty was Cress, who ruled over almost all the territory west of the Halys River. The royal family of ancient Lydia is known as the Myrmidata dynasty from 680 BC until the conquest of the kingdom by the Achaemenian Cyrus II the Great. They say that the city of the present Ilias had been a village for a time with a small and modest sanctuary of Athena, but that when Alexander arrived there after the Battle of Grinnik, he decorated the sanctuary with offerings, gave the village the title of city, ordered those in charge to improve it with buildings, and granted it tax exemption. For example, Paris bore the name of Alexander at the same time. The ancient city of Troy was identified with the temple of Athena. The goddesses Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, along with the rest of the Olympian gods, were invited to the wedding of the mortal hero Peleus with the goddess Thetis, the parents of Achilles. Eris, the goddess of discord, was the only goddess not invited. She then threw a golden apple with the inscription Cap Alpha Lambda Lambda Sigma Tau, for the most beautiful, to the circle, sparking a dispute between Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, because each of the goddesses claimed the apple for themselves. The three asked Zeus to decide which of them was the most beautiful. However, Zeus wisely wanted to avoid burdening himself with this choice and sent for Paris, the beautiful, if rejected, son of Troy. All three goddesses tried to gain Paris' favor through bribery. Hera promised political power and dominance in Asia, Athena wisdom and the art of war. Aphrodite, however, read Paris' wishes most clearly by promising him the most beautiful woman on earth, namely Helen. Now all the gods were divided by strife, because Zeus, roaring in the sky at that time, was thinking of great things, even to stir up storms and tempests on the border world, and he was already in a hurry to end the bloodline of mortals, proclaiming that the gods would destroy the lives of men. But Zeus really laid sorrow on those born of immortals and men to grief. After the 10th year it was prophesied that Troy could not fall without Heracles' bow. Blood ran in streams, soaked was the whole earth, as Trojans and their alien helpers died. Here lay men struck down by bitter death, all up and down the city in blood. Since Homeros uses the name Achaeans as a collective name for all Trojan-fighting Greeks, and because in Hittite archives the name Achaejawa, some assume that the bearers of the Mycenaean civilization called themselves Achaeans. There is a copy of a letter addressed by this king to the king of Achaeawa, in which he addresses his counterpart as brother. The kingdom of Ahiwa appears to have been Apatrate during the reign of Muwatalli's brother Hattusili III, ca. 1265 to 1250 BC. Texts attest addressed to Amurapi of Ugarit, who is said to have provided ships to supply Hijawa men on the coast of the Lukka lands with metals. The Dorians are equated with Danes. In addition, Hittite swords have been documented as grave goods in the necropolis of Miletus from the late 13th century BC, and a vessel fragment from that time painted in the Mycenaean style shows a Hittite horn crown. It is known that the Achaeans were already in Colophon, Pitton, Iassos, and Galicarnas at that time. In 1450 to 1430 BC, Maiano settlements on Nas and in Curia were conquered. Hades. In Latin mythology, Pluto, the Latin alter ego of Hades, is first defined as the lord of the underworld and only later as the lord of Hades. Platon is described in the Iliad as the god most hated by mortals. That people prefer the term Platon, organizer of wealth, since the term Hades inspires fear. The plants sacred to him are the cypress and the daffodils, was alluded to by Hesiod in his Theagon as a demon who punishes the oaths of failed oaths. These figures were all merged into Pluto. Medusa, daughter of Ceto and Phorcys, is the only one of the three Gregoria who are fatal and is seduced by Poseidon. She is beheaded by Perseus at the edges of the ocean in his blood. The shield of Heracles depicts Perseus, equipped with the helmet of Hades, pursued by the Gregoria after having beheaded Medusa, whose head is enclosed in a golden bag that he carries on his back. Some scholars have, however, studied the relationship it could have with the Medinet Habu inscriptions, which narrate the struggle of the Egyptians of the time of Ramses III against the peoples of the sea, who attempted an invasion of their territory around 1176 BC. According to the inscriptions, the Egyptians defeated in a land battle, and in another see a coalition of peoples of dubious identification. Traditionally, the two gods made the builders of the wall of Troy, sometimes by Apollo a simple shepherd and Poseidon the master builder. Divine punishments against Laomedon are numerous and ruthless. Apollo unfolds an epidemic throughout the region. The root SMS or SMS stands for sun in all Semitic languages, for example in Arabic, Shams, or in Hebrew, Schemish. Some recent authors consider whether it may have originally been a female deity. It was only when the much older Sumerian culture, with which the Akkadians met and whose sun god Samus was merged with their ideas of the sun as Utu, overlaying them, that the heavenly fire, once thought of as female, became a male god. Immortality is only inherent in the divine phenomenon of life, in that it sheds what is used up like the snake sheds its old skin. Helios, Samus Aten, is new every morning, always a foot wide. Heraclitus. The most important religious practice was sacrifice, bloody, sacrifice of cattle or pigeons, and bloodless, fusion of wine, milk, honey, or oil. Apparently human sacrifices were also practiced at Ugarit. Firstborn sons are sacrificed when laying a very important building or in case of extreme danger. The dispute whether Ijoa can be connected with the Achaeans is therefore still not entirely decided.
Glaubst du an das Schicksal, Neo?
Nein,
Warum nicht?